Hey guys, it's that time again when we have a new killer coming out. His name is Pinhead. If you have not heard, I'm also featuring Nemesis in this video since I didn't make a tier list with him before, and Trickster buffed, of course. Um, I feel like this is going to be an interesting tier list because nobody has really made one with him yet. I don't think I've seen any at least, and tier lists haven't been really going around that much either. And so I figured, you know what, I'll make one. Plus, I love them. So let's just jump right into it. Excuse me, with Trapper, D tier killer like normal. Like she should be. Very low skill killer, not fun to go against. You don't really want a not fun to go against killer to be so high up there, especially since the killer takes little to no skill. Like just learn how to place a trap. There you go. I've never liked Trapper. I never will like him. I think he's a boring, brainless killer. And if you like Trapper, then well, learn a different killer because he is not good, nor is he really a respectable killer in my eyes. Wraith. Wraith is a killer that I feel like is either B plus or B. I want to say B plus though, just because he can really crush. Honestly, like he is really good, like really good. If a team is not coordinated, if the team is not coordinated, then you will probably win. He's probably higher if it's an uncoordinated team. But where I'm doing this based off of high MMR, since that's where I play as a nurse player. You kind of, if you're good at nurse, you get high MMR. That's kind of how it works if you're good with the best killer in the game. Um, and so if I were to play the same MMR with Wraith, it would be a lot harder since the survivors kind of know what they're doing. At least that's what I've noticed when I play nurse. Like I notice I have to try or else I actually lose, which is not normal. Because with nurse normally I didn't have to try and I would win no matter what, and it was kind of boring. Since two potatoes and two good survivors, what are the two good survivors gonna do if you can't really last in a chase? But when there's at least like three good survivors that are just cranking gens when I'm just trolling around trying to do like 360 blinks and all that, then that's when you kind of lose. I'm gonna continue. I kind of went on a little rampage there, a rant. Let's go with Hillbilly. I believe Hillbilly is like a lower B plus killer, and I feel sad to say that because he is such a high skill killer. He's literally like very close to the skill as Blight in my opinion. There are a lot of things. Honestly, I think like Billy, you can be like there are more skillful things you can do with Billy. Curving is just such a skillful action, whereas Blight, it's like I've seen Lilith Omen, like what he does, it looks nice, sure, but it's like it's not as hard as what you'd see like Battle Guy on Billy doing. Like I've seen him do some nasty curves. Um, Going on with Nurse. Oh, also, I want to explain like Billy does have like a high skill cap and skill floor, and I always have felt like killers like Billy should be higher up on a tier list. They should be top tier because killers with high skill should have high skill requirement, should have high reward. On with Nurse, who is a perfect example of what I was saying. She is a very high skill floor and super high skill ceiling killer, and she is the best killer undoubtedly in the game. She has the ability to pressure multiple survivors at once with just a blink at them and a blink again to the other one. I've done it multiple times, where it's juggling. That's what they call it, I guess, pressuring multiple survivors. Legion's another one who's insane at doing that, but that's all he really does. So like, yeah. With Nurse, of course, her skill cap is basically limitless, like Huntress, where you can be like the best nurse in the game, and since you can be anywhere within 20 meters base of you, then there you go. Like, what does the survivor do if this nurse? Like, just think of it like if the nurse could have wall hacks, how what could you do? Like, that's kind of skill cap. Like, if you were the best you could possibly be at the killer, and nurse has the highest skill cap along with Huntress. Like, if you could hit every hatchet. Nurse and Huntress would be like the two people who you'd want to play. Going on to Michael, I feel like Michael is like a C tier killer. He is not very good. He has very, very slow early game setup, so if you're not bringing Corrupt, then you're kind of screwed already. If you do have Corrupt, that kind of makes up for that, but he still has like a struggle at the start. Sure, it doesn't take too long to get to tier 2, but like you can't chase anyone, and the survivor's just going to stall by making it so you can't stalk. So it's just a big waste of time at the start just so you can start to use your power. Michael's not good in chase either. All he gets when he tier 3s is a slight lunge increase and like vault speed buff, which really, if you're just going to be looping a jungle gem, like as long as you don't get zoned by the fake pass by the vault to vault, then you're fine. And most survivors know how to look for that if they're good. Going on, Hag, I want to say she's like an A tier killer. So you could probably argue A plus. You could argue lower. I've had people that said she was S. I've had people who say that she was like C. Hag is a very difficult killer to rank because in high MMR, like your tournament squads, that you'd face, like when I signed up for tournaments, I would face some cracked people. You could not play Hag against them on certain maps at least, because they would literally just harass you with with their flashlight user person, make it so you couldn't set up, so you're just a 4.4 who's forced to chase a survivor that knows what they're doing, and that's not good. But if the survivors aren't coordinated, they could even be good but not very coordinated, and you'd still roll them because just there's not much you can do against a Hag that's set up. If she's set up, she's insane if they don't have flashlights. That's it though. Hag isn't a particularly really high skill killer either, so I don't really like the fact that she's as strong as she can be. Like with Doctor, where I'm gonna rate him, I think Doctor's a perfect example of a killer that doesn't have too high of a skill ceiling or floor, but he performs as he should. Like Doctor isn't extremely overpowered, and he isn't like underpowered, and he doesn't take too much skill, and he doesn't like take no skill at all. So it's like he should sit in the middle where he really does. He's like a high B, low B plus tier killer, and that's where I'm putting him. And that's how killers like him should be. Like Huntress, she's a high skill killer in my opinion, and she's going in A tier, and I think that Huntress is good there. Like she is a high skill killer, high skill killer. Maybe she doesn't have the highest skill floor. Like she's kind of easy to pick up after a bit, but she does have a quite high skill ceiling, and you can tell a good Huntress. You can't really like if there's a decent Wraith and a good Wraith, it's a lot harder to tell in between that than a decent Huntress and a good Huntress. Same with Nurse. Like the higher the skill cap, the easier it is to tell really how good they are. Going on with Bubba, I want to put Bubba top of B tier, kind of like where Hillbilly is. I think Hillbilly is like lower B plus, and Bubba's like higher B. They're kind of similar in a way that if you're out of position, they'll down you quite easily, but Bubba just does it a little bit better. Better at loops, Bubba can down you better than Hillbilly can, most likely, unless the Hillbilly is just a curve god, which those don't exist anymore. Then yeah, Bubba is quite good. The only thing Billy does better is mobility, and that is probably one of the strongest things to have. That and just the ability to just shut down loops like Nurse's Spirit do best, and those are why those are some of the best killers. Freddy, I feel like he is a B plus tier killer as well, but I think he's top of B plus. You could even argue A. Just I feel like survivors are kind of learning how to play against him. Like his snares have been nerfed, so you can't really spam them as much, and you can't really use them for detection and all that to guard places. You kind of just use them at a loop, and you're slower, so it takes a bit less time to down them. But still, survivors know what to do. You throw it on a pellet when you get to it. You spread out, so his ruin and his teleportation doesn't really get to you as much. Like if he's teleporting to one person, he's going kind of committing to that. And you have three other people doing gens, maybe. And yeah, you kind of just Freddy doesn't have much to help him in a chase besides the fact that he can just burn down pallets, and if a survivor tries to loop, if he plays it right, he can normally get a hit. But yeah, that's about it with Freddy. I don't like Freddy in particular either, and I just want to mention that I think he needs to be toned down a bit more, just because I think he should be like I want him to go back to his old self where he was really bad because he was just such a simple killer, and he still is. It's just spam stuff and teleport. Like Freddy, like there's not much to him, and I'm just gonna move on because I could talk about that all day, but I don't have much time for every killer if I want to make a decent set video. Pig, I just rated Pig. I should be burned out clown. Pig, she is a decent killer. I feel like she's not that good, honestly, but I feel like she is better than people say she is. She's definitely not the worst killer in the game. Like I hear some people say she is. And people always bring up the RNG factor, but it goes both ways, right? Like either a survivor, literally, I have had survivors that weren't actually that bad die to the trap because either they're too busy trying to do the like heals and like saves and stuff, and they just don't have the time to take off the trap, and they just end up dying, or it's just you just like search every box across the map and like that's the last one, right? Sure, can get the box off on your first try, but like there's also times where it takes every box on the map to get it off. And yeah, that's Pig. She also has the anti-loop, which is her dash, which I really think people underlook. Like that can just get you so many hits that you normally wouldn't get as a base killer, and or it could force a pallet drop early, which is good, or you could force a survivor to rotate from the loop, and that's good too. Honestly, I feel like I'm gonna put Pig in C tier, higher C tier than Michael, just because I feel like her gen slowdown is good, and her on her stealth whenever she wants. It's always a good thing to be able to stealth. The only problem with that is that she's slow, and if they maybe fix that she was so slow and had such a bad POV when she was stealthing, maybe she could be a higher killer. And I would like that, honestly. I don't think Pig's that. I think Pig should be like in a doctor kind of place where she's not a particularly super hard killer to play, but she's also not like one of the easier killers to play, so she should be a bit better for the skill she takes. Now, Clown, I feel like Clown is like a high C tier killer. Um, Clown has anti-loop, and with the bottles being brought in, if a survivor decides to commit to a loop and you just stand on the pallet, antidote yourself, and intoxicate the survivor, you're gonna get a free hit. If the survivor didn't drop it, I mean, normally you could get a free hit anyways, but if like no matter what, you get a hit there. Like the survivor is like 15% slower and you're 15% faster. There's not much they can do, or I don't know, it might be 20% slower actually, just something like that. His antidote, like with certain add-ons too, just makes him actually really good. Like the cigar box, being able to see survivors within 60 meters, that add-on, like that's what I love to see in an add-on that doesn't like overpower a survive, like isn't overpowered, but it's just such a nice add-on to have. It's like kind of like lethal pursuer. I don't think that's like a good perk, but it's like not a bad perk. Like it's just nice to have. Like honestly, there are much better perks than lethal pursuer, but it's just nice to have. So that's why I bring it. Moving on to Spirit, I think Spirit is going to be our first A plus tier killer. I have never agreed with the fact that Spirit is the best killer in the game. Not the fact, with the opinion that Spirit is the best killer in the game. When people say that, I want to cringe. I've never agreed with the fact that Spirit is really an S tier killer. I might put her there begrudgingly in some of my videos. I don't quite remember, but I do think Spirit is a good killer, but I just don't think she can keep up with Nurse, and that is the problem. Nurse is just better in every aspect. Her mobility is better because she doesn't have to wait on a cooldown that is also her lethality. Her cooldown is 3 seconds per blink, and that is nothing to wait compared to the 20 seconds I think of her recharge. And her recharge is also where her lethality comes from. So to get mobility, you basically have to lose lethality, and to get lethality, you basically have to lose mobility. But she has good mobility and lethality nonetheless, and her lethality is really what makes her so strong. It's just that Nurse and Spirit have about the same chase, have about the same lethality, except that Nurse just has that little bit of where the survivor can't just throw down a god pallet or vault a god window and they're safe with Nurse because she can just blink through it. Spirit, you can throw down a god pallet and she's forced to unphase and hit it. Like on game, like there are those god pallets. Unless you want to do like a 5-head mega mind game, then you can be my guest, but like that takes a lot of time and it's risky. Going on, I talked a little too much on Spirit, but I'm going to move on to Legion, who I really don't like as a killer either. I want to put him, honestly, I want to put him high C. You could probably argue B too. I just feel like Legion, if the survivors are not well coordinated, can destroy just because he has such a good time just spreading out pressure, stopping people from doing gens, and just lethality in general. It's kind of like, I think he's better than Michael because people are going to be injured, which is basically a free one-shot unless they want to constantly waste time healing, which then you have even more gen regression. He has information built into his power. He's just an annoying killer to face too, so that might make him a bit better because nobody really, like, once you're facing a Legion, you kind of just troll because he's so boring. At least that's what I do. Moving on, I don't want to talk about Legion much, so I'm gonna go with Plague. I think Plague is like with Billy kind of. She's really good. Like if you're in the open, Plague, a good Plague. Like it's hard to actually, it's not as easy as with like Billy or Bubba to confirm that one shot combo, but with Plague you can do that, especially with add-ons. And when her power is active, she becomes like the best killer in the game, besides maybe other than when Oni's power is active, or like Old Nurse. Like Old Nurse is broken. But the problem is she doesn't always have her power. But the thing is, the thing that I want to put her in A, but it's like, if we consider coordinated survivors, it is really hard to play against coordinated survivors as play. Sure, they're one shot and they're easy to follow because they're coughing and everything. But you're just a base killer who only has one chance to. That's right. She does get one fountain, so I'm gonna put her a bit higher in B. I'm gonna put her in like high B plus, like with Freddy. But survivors can deny you your power after that one power, and if you're not running the apples, then you don't get more power. And her power is really good, don't get me wrong. And her other power, it's like a bit better than Michael because it can spread and you don't have to do anything. But he also gets the vault speed and she doesn't. But then you also got to consider she has her power, which is insane. So yeah. Plague is a difficult killer to rank because there are so many what ifs and this and that. So I'm just gonna put her here. I feel like this is a confident place to put her. It's like the higher mid, and that is where I think everybody agrees. Most people agree if they're like good at the game that Plague is like a high mid tier killer. I think when Plague first came out, a lot of people thought she was like a high tier killer or like a high mid, and she is like a high mid killer. So yeah, she's not definitely not a killer you want to bring in like a pro play though, because Oddstarver tried it and he got wrecked. I remember watching that on the best of the best. Like I was rooting for him too, and normally I don't root for the killers for some reason. I root for like I don't know. That's weird. I'm a killer main, and yet I root for the survivors. Okay, I didn't I already rank Legion? That's weird. I'm gonna put Legion in high C. I don't. It says I didn't rank him, but whatever. Demogorgon. He's been buffed. He's a tiny bit better. The buff wasn't anything too big. His add-ons are better in my opinion now, and he's of course he did get his base kit was buffed. It wasn't anything like huge though, but it was a little buff, and I think I put him on B tier before like high B tier, so it only makes sense to move him up just a little bit, and that's why he's going in the B plus. Um, there's not really much to say. Like if you're out of position, you're gonna get hit by him. His lunge, his shred is kind of OP. His portals aren't all that good. Like I'm sure they're okay, but you're not really gonna get a jump on a survivor that's paying attention. They're just gonna know that you're TPing, just hear it, run away, get that distance. And sure, you got where you got faster, but at the same time, survivors are doing gens, and you lose pressure, I guess, since every survivor, the survivor probably ran and blah blah blah. Let's just go on to the next. Oni is a very tough one for me to rank too, because I consider a lot when I'm thinking about Oni. And normally I put him in A plus tier, but it's just hard to rank him in A plus. I don't know. This is difficult. Oh wait, my game isn't working. What's going on? What just happened? That's not good. 1 second. Okay, let me see if I can fix this. Okay, sweet. Okay, I'm so sorry for that. Oni, he's a hard one to rank because you got to consider a lot like Plague. Like, if you have your power up, he is better than Nurse in my opinion. But you don't always have your power up. But you have it up enough, right? Like Oni is a killer like Nurse and Spirit, who if you play well, you're gonna win most likely. Like there's not much the survivors can do. There's only so many resources you can waste to prevent the Oni from getting hits. Like depending on the maps, of course, but most of the time Oni is gonna get that hit. And if you have corrupt, then all the resources are wasted for nothing most likely. Maybe a gen or two, but that's it. Then you have your power. Your power is insane. Like survivors cannot do much when your power is up unless they want to die, especially if you have monitor and speed add-ons. Like you'll be on them before they hear they I can see you arguing to putting Oni lower in like high A, but I feel like Oni is like a low A plus killer. Moving on to Deathslinger, I think Deathslinger is like a high B plus tier killer, kind of like with Plague. Like his power is consistent, but it's not as good as Plague. Like his power isn't as good as Plague's power, but it's consistent and Plague's isn't. So they're kind of like it's kind of like equaling out, like consistency over less power, but inconsistency over more power, kind of. So I just want to kind of put them together. They both have like they both really just excel in being extremely lethal in a chase, but Deathslinger just does it a tiny bit better in my opinion. Pyramid Head, I'm gonna put them in between each other, in between Plague and actually I'm gonna put him in A tier probably. Nah, this is tough because he got that little nerf where it's like the survivor cannot counterplay instead of just dropping your stuff at the loop now. Like you can reverse back into the pallet. Nah, like Pyramid Head isn't that good in my opinion. Like he's a killer with a super high skilling, but like survivors that just know how to play the game, it'll be very hard for you to actually like win as a Pyramid Head if you're facing good survivors versus Nurse, where if you're facing good survivors, it's actually kind of easy because you know what they're gonna do. With Pyramid Head, you might know what they're gonna do, but it's like they know what you're gonna do too, so it's kind of like yeah, that's not much you can do. So yeah, I don't even know if what I said made any sense. Let's just continue. Blight. Blight is a killer that I would say is in between like Oni and Spirit. Blight is a very, very good killer. He just isn't like Nurse, where there's absolutely zero counterplay if the Nurse plays well on her part. If the Nurse makes no mistakes, then there is very little chance of the survivors winning. It just depends. Like, does she get a bad map for Nurse? Does she are the survivors just cracked and like have proved themselves and you didn't bring like a base Nurse against like base survivors though? The Nurse would probably win if the Nurse would win if there are no mistakes made. But with Blight, like the survivors, if the survivors play perfect and the Blight plays perfect, the Blight will have a hard time because loops do counter Blight. Like there's not much he can do at most loops. Some loops, sure, but if the Blight survivor plays right, then Blight just kind of struggles, especially since his little gimmicky flicks have been removed. Now he's just like you could argue for him being a bit lower, especially since survivors kind of are learning how to play against him now. But yeah, twins I think are going to be our uh, first A time showing in a long time. I mean, we haven't had an tier killer added for quite a while. They are an A tier killer in my mind as long as the survivors do not group up. If the survivors do not actively play in duos, like together, this one survivor doesn't leave each other the whole time, then the twins are really good. Also medkits. Medkits and grouping up counter the killer. But people don't normally group up in the game because it's just more efficient. But that is how you do play against the twins. But if you aren't grouping up, then the twins are kind of broken. And it's just like the twins can be an S tier killer, but the fact that medkits, such a common item, are so good against them, and like just sticking with a friend or something is really good against them too, kind of lower their power a bit. But nonetheless, they're still pretty decent even if you have medkits. Trickster, he's probably like there's so many. Like this is a good sign, I guess, when you have so many killers like being in the higher mid tier. Maybe this is just my opinion being wrong and all that, but like I feel like Trickster is like lower B plus. I feel like he's kind of strong now. Like he's not bad. He's still like not gonna win if the survivors know what they're doing. But like if the survivors are like average, like a little bit above average, he can win if you play even decent. Like six knives, they're down. Like six knives, they're injured. Six knives, they're down. It's not hard to pump six knives into someone. Most maps are decent for him since he doesn't have the super long windup like Huntress. So yeah, that's kind of Trickster. He's quite a simple killer too. Just spam until they're dead and then reload. Nemesis, our new addition to the tier list. Nemesis is definitely an A tier killer. I don't think there's any arguing with him being any lower, and I don't think you're gonna want him to really be any higher. Nemesis has the kind of zoning potential of like Demogorgon, where he can just bring out his tentacle and the survivors are gonna not take the vault or drop the pallet. But then he has like the lethality of like a Huntress on certain loops where he can just hit over it. You know, he's more dangerous at like Shack than Huntress is in my opinion if he's like tier 3 because his whip just like what do you do against it? He pulls it up so quick and like he can just attack so fast. Like there's not much you can do as a survivor and that's in certain situations. Whereas Huntress, it's a lot harder. Um the Pinhead. Pinhead, unfortunately, in his current state, I feel like is probably a D tier killer. There's just he doesn't have much going for him. Like his power is just takes so long to get someone if they just play right. Like all they like, there's nothing you can do really if the survivor's playing right besides just keep on poking at them and hope that they don't break their chains fast. Like preemptively holding M1 and like using lens sight blockers to just break the stuff, you know? Like that'll just like he's just not good, and I want him to be good because he seems kind of fun, and he is kind of fun, but he's also just not good. So I feel like if a killer's not good, then they're not fun to me, sort of, because I want to be able to win if I play right. It's like Nurse. I love Nurse because if I play right, I will win no matter what. Even though the survivors are really good, if I play right, I will most likely win. You know, sometimes bugs get in my way as Nurse, and that makes me aggravated. But you know, you can't control a broken game. I feel like maybe I was a bit off on the B tier. I feel like there should be a bit more killers probably in the B tier. But if just like the basic principles, like the strong killers are up there, the weak killers are kind of down there. You know, B plus, you could put some killers from there in the A and some killers from the B. But like, I feel like this is good. Let me just quickly summarize this. Nearest best killer in the game: Spirit, Oni, Blight. They have ways to kind of counter play them. Spirit having like the least out of them and Oni having like the most out of them, but they're really strong if they're played right and if they use their power correctly. Huntress, Hag, Twins. Nemesis, they're like they have their situations where they are extremely oppressive, but you can kind of get around it. Like with Nemesis, you have the injections where I wouldn't go out of your way to get them, but if they're nearby, you definitely get them because they take a lot more time. Twins group up and stay healed. Hag, antagonize her at the start of the game. Bring flashlights if you're so scared of Hag. And Huntress, line of sight blockers, of course. She's slow, just abuse that. And then you have the like these are the top tier. These are like high tier to top tier killers like Nurse, Spirit, Blight. Only those are top tier, and then A tier. Those are high tier. Then you have the mid high tier, which are a lot of the killers. Surprisingly, I feel like a lot of the killers are really good. Um, like the mid high tier killers are killers that you can do a lot about. Those are normally the killers that'll be kind of more fun to face. Like I think Pyramid Head's kind of fun. I think Plague's kind of fun. I think Wraith, Blight, and Demo are fun to face because they are interactive. I don't even really hate Deathslinger that much either, and I know some people do, but I don't really. And like Freddy now, I don't think he's that bad either. But the mid B, the high mid tier killers are kind of fun to go up against because they're not extremely oppressive, but they can also like do stuff to you. Like they're not like Pig where if you get blood lodge, you screwed. Um, you have Bubba Doctor. Those are killers that are kind of underperforming in my opinion, but they can still do good if they're played well. And then you have the C and D tier killers where they're really like they're not very good. Like if you play well, there's not much they can do about it. Especially poor Cenobite, poor Pinhead. He seems like such a fun killer. Just like his power just seems so cool too, and they give him new pickup animations like swings and like it's all this cool stuff. And he's just not good. But we'll see. Things change, you know. And yeah, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.